All right, it's happening. Many people want to know my hot take. Chomsky. It's happening. So the other day, Noam Chomsky rose from the crypt once again and said some very interesting stuff. So, it's a little spoiled if you haven't seen this in the text here. But so I want to play this whole thing. This is a very interesting clip. Needless to say, I disagree with what Noam Chomsky is going to say here, and I will explain why. But let's watch.
Well, there is fortunately one statesman in the United States and Europe who has laid out a person of a high political figure who...
There's only one politician in all of the US and Europe that has a good idea on how to handle the crisis in Ukraine. Only one? What the
who has made a very sensible statement about how you can solve the crisis, namely by facilitating negotiations instead of undermining them, and moving towards establishing some...
So, okay, one of the problems with this... Now, I understand. I hate war. I hate what's going on in Ukraine. I think Russia is evil. For that matter, Russia, the government of Russia, I should say. For that matter, right? I also think the United States government is evil. I can understand why people would think that NATO is not sincerely interested in ending the war going on. I mean, calling it a war, I prefer the term invasion because it's extremely offensive. It's one side is it's not like Ukraine is going into Russian territory and trying to overthrow Russian governments or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's but anyway, I understand why people would be skeptical of NATO. They don't have a good track record for the most part. That said, what are negotiations? What are you negotiating? Giving up half the country to Russia just because they're a bully and they said so? I understand. I understand why the thought process, less people would die if you just gave up Ukraine to Putin. But that implies that one, Putin has a general and any interest whatsoever in not just taking all of Ukraine, right? So that's the first, assumption. Two, it assumes that Putin would, okay, let's assume he takes the Donbass region, keeps Crimea, and then he's just going to stop. He's going to be like, all right, mission accomplished. My life is complete. You know what I mean? Why would anyone believe that Vladimir Putin would just, took control of the Donbass region, took control of Crimea, or keep control of Crimea, and we'll just leave the rest of Ukraine alone? Now, also, Russia, the government of Russia, treats its citizens like garbage. Now, again, is that to say that Ukraine's government is any better? Well, yeah, but is it perfect? No. But is it better than Russia? To all my understanding, yes. Russia, the government of Russia routinely poisons people, assassinates people that are political opponents of the ruling regime in the Kremlin. Again, tens of thousands, if not 100,000 or so protesters who are against the, quote, special military operation, right? Whatever that fucking garbage is. They've been disappeared, potentially thrown in jails. Who knows their whereabouts? New laws were passed that if you, do any misinformation, and who controls what's misinformation? The Russian government controls what's declared misinformation, right? About the special military operation, right? You can be thrown in jail and prison for 15 fucking years. Right? This is not a country that, they're going to control the Donbass region and then everything's going to be great. Everyone's going to sing Kumbaya and the world will be saved. Huh? What? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, unless there's a secret knowledge that Noam has that he is not, like, being clear about, like, he has some secret wise, like, wisdom of some kind, right, that no one else knows, right? Like, he's, like, fucking, like, I don't know, he's doing something. But anyway, let's continue here, because this is really bizarre. And again, so that is all separate from the idea that Donald Trump, which, again, this is the one statesman he's referring to. Like, Donald Trump is the only one with a good idea. You can't think of anyone else. Like, let's assume that your ideal position is whatever this is. Why point to Donald Trump? Like, it's just like, what?
Kind of accommodation in Europe, maybe along in which there are no military alliances, but just mutual accommodation. He didn't say it, but it's something like what George H.W. Bush, the first Bush, not the second, proposed in the early 90s after the collapse of the Soviet Union, proposed what they called a partnership for peace, which would be open for Europeans generally, Eurasians as well. It wouldn't eliminate NATO, but he would live up to the promise that NATO would not expand to the east, firm promise to Gorbachev. Keep to that, allow NATO there, but kind of de-emphasize it.
So, yes, is it problematic that NATO, quote-unquote, expanded? Now, let's understand what that means, right? Like, NATO is not like some like organism or like a parasite or like some sort of thing that's just like controlling random parts of land, right? NATO is, again, ostensibly a defensive military alliance. Now, does that mean NATO is purely defensive throughout its entire history? Absolutely not. NATO, for the most part, is garbage, right? But again, it's not like, oh, NATO is like, oh, Georgia, you're part of us now, right? It's a two-way street, right? Georgia, right, or any other state or post-Soviet state of some kind, right, that would want to join NATO, right? They want to join NATO, right? Finland and Sweden have resisted joining NATO for a long time, and it wasn't until Vladimir Putin threatened to nuke their countries that they were like, yo, maybe we want to get in NATO, and now it looks like they're going to get into NATO. It's a two-way street. One of the main reasons why Ukraine is not in NATO is because a lot of NATO countries don't want Ukraine in NATO, right? But, again, the idea that, okay, NATO is expanding, so let's go into Ukraine and murder a bunch of civilians to combat NATO? What? Like, I just, like this idea is like, oh, well, what is Putin gonna do? He had no other choice. He had to go in and commit a mass genocide of civilians. He had to go in. There's no other choice. What do you... I mean, I don't know. NATO's expanding, so let's go kill a bunch of kids, children, and all, like, got to. I mean, like, this idea that, like, oh, it's the only choice. Like, it's bizarre, right? You can say NATO expanding, probably not the best idea. Maybe NATO should have stopped existing after the Soviet Union fell. But guess what? That's not the world we live in. So we can play alternative history if we want. You can have your own view of alternative history, what would have been ideal, right? In my opinion, there's a lot of alternative history games we could play that would turn the world into a better world, right? But guess what? We got NATO. NATO exists, right? And it is no excuse to murder a bunch of innocent civilians. It's just not. Like come on. Come on, right? Like, and also, this idea that they're like, are there people in the United States or in Europe that would want to see an elongated proxy war in Ukraine to weaken the Kremlin regime or something like that? Probably, right? But does that mean that people in Ukraine shouldn't have a right to defend themselves? Like, this idea that the U.S. speaks for Ukraine is ridiculous. Ukraine speaks for Ukraine. If Ukrainian civilians want to surrender, they should be allowed to communicate that to their leader, and their leader would surrender based on the behalf of the will of the people. If the will of the people is to fight back and defend themselves against the aggressor, that's the will of the people. Right? Like, that's just, like, if they want to defend their country, they have every right to do so. And look at what is going on with Putin, right, with his actions in Georgia and Crimea and other places over the last couple of, the last 2 decades or so, right? Can you really? And then look, again, Putin threatens Finland and Sweden with nuclear fucking attack. And now they want to join NATO? Can you fucking, like, do people really, like, not know? Like, if you have to choose, right, between two bullies. There's two bullies. One is NATO, one is Putin's Russia. There's two bullies, okay? And one of the bullies said, I'm going to literally fucking kill you and your fucking family and erase your existence from planet Earth, and no one will remember anything about you or your people. That's Putin. And NATO is like, we're just kind of chilling right now. You want to join us? I'm going to go with the bully who doesn't want to fucking murder me, right? So I'm just saying, like, this concept is fucking ridiculous. That like NATO expanding is like it's like a moral justification for Putin's actions. And then what are they going to negotiate? Like, yes, wouldn't it be great if world leaders could all sit together, do drugs, chill, pass a blunt back and forth, and make world peace? Wouldn't that be fucking great? Yeah, but guess what? That's not the world we live in.
So other countries could join, including Russia for that matter, join the Partnership for Peace. Tajikistan joined, for example, not NATO, and move towards a world, a Europe, Eurasia with no military alliances. Actually, de Gaulle had similar vision. Emmanuel Macron, in his initiatives trying to contact Putin, suggested something similar. So going back to the one Western statesman, he didn't mention all of this, but he suggested something similar. Move towards negotiations and diplomacy instead of escalating the war. Try to see if he can bring about an accommodation, which would be roughly along these lines. His name is Donald J. Trump.
And that's where the clip ends. There's other versions of this clip going around where he talks more about why Donald J. Trump is the only one that can save Ukraine. But, like, this fucking shit is insane. Like, this is insane. I'm gonna, like, and also it needs to be understood, yes, like, we are allowed to have respectful disagreement. I'm allowed to say that Noam Chomsky, right, his work previously throughout his life has inspired me in many ways. I've learned a lot from reading some of his stuff and from listening to a lot of his stuff. But guess what? Not everyone is right on everything. People are allowed to be wrong. And it's a good thing if someone is wrong to explain why they're wrong. I'm not playing this game of like, oh, cancel culture. Oh, is Chomsky canceled? Is everything he fucking does, is everything he's ever said evil now because of this? No! He's allowed to produce good things for humanity. He's allowed to be a good influence for leftism in his own time period. But he is past his fucking prime. We need to be honest here, right? In the same way that I'm allowed to think that Christopher Hitchens, right, earlier works, pretty decent. After he became a warmongering piece of shit, not so good, right? We're allowed to say that people can evolve and they don't always evolve in a good direction. Right now, again, we're allowed to say people's opinions on other things can be correct, like the, theory of manufacturing consent, really positive, really, ahead of its time, a very, very good, book, a very good, kind of theory of how the, media works and stuff. But also, right, his opinion on Ukraine, not so good. We're allowed to have these opinions, right? I would even go as far as to say that his opinion on the Ukraine situation is just horrible. Like, I mean, it's just, it's really bad. But again, I want to ask this for anyone who agrees with Chomsky on this one. What do you want to negotiate? Like, I'm just asking, what is on the table? And why do these people think that Putin is like a rational, justified actor? Right? Like, oh, it's okay to murder civilians because NATO, another country voluntarily, because of the will of the people, wanted to join NATO, and NATO was like, okay, we'll take you in. So now let's murder random civilians in another country. Let's murder random civilians in another country because country 1 joined NATO. So let's go all the way over to country 5 and just start murdering kids. That's not a rational actor. This is not someone that you could just negotiate with. Again, I don't know what to tell you, man. This is a fucking brain dead take. Like, it's brain dead. And then also, you can present this. Like Chomsky's opinion, you can present this opinion without escalating and endorsing Donald Trump's fucking, brand. Like, he can have the same exact opinion without endorsing Donald Trump's brand on this, right? He can say all the same things that he said without making this all about the one statesman who's fighting back. You know what I mean? And that's what leads me to believe that this guy has lost the plot a little bit, because he should know that. He should know that if he wants to be taken seriously, he would not be escalating, or rather, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, but he would not be signaling that Donald Trump is the one statesman, as if no one agrees with Donald Trump's position on this. It's only Donald Trump. Not like half the Republican Party that have his same exact position. No. There's only one statesman, and his name is Donald J. Trump. Like, it sounds like this. Like, it sounds like it was an advertisement. It's not like, why would you say it like that? Like, it's so weird. Like, the delivery here is strange. This is like, I feel like this is going to be on like a Trump ad reel, right? Like, Trump is so cool that even Noam Chomsky endorsed him, right? Like, and then it's going to play
on these lines. His name is Donald J. Trump.
Right? And then it's going to go like, I'm Donald J. Trump and I approve this message, right? Like, what is this, man? This is some crazy shit. This is some crazy shit. It's that simple. I mean, I really don't know what else to say. This is Noam Chomsky posting L's, but like, and to an extreme degree that it's like, my God, like, is it elder abuse to allow him online anymore? I don't know, man. Like, this is insane. Like, I really cannot believe I'm watching this. I mean, like, I know Chomsky has had very problematic takes on the, situation in Ukraine for the last couple of months and last couple of years especially, right? So I know he's always been kind of like missing the ball a little bit. He kind of respects Putin a little bit too much. I wouldn't necessarily say that he's a tanky, but I mean, like, I know that this is one of his blind spots for sure. But like, I mean, like, this stuff is, I mean, I cannot fathom how someone could have that position. And then again, have that position while like saying that Donald Trump is the guy to go with. You can have the same exact position without promoting a fascist. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, like, come on. Like, this is insane stuff. This is insane stuff.